Hello lovelies, welcome back at Gist Band TV for sweet gist. They used to say the greatest luxury in love is privacy, the ability to stay invisible and untouched by online noise. Pearl believed that deeply. She loved how quiet things were between her and Maurice, how no one really knew what they shared. It made her feel chosen in a world where everyone was shouting for attention. But the moment Sonia entered the picture, that peaceful invisibility became a curse. Suddenly, all the silence that once protected the relationship began to suffocate it. Maurice and Sonia were everywhere, laughing, acting, glowing. Their faces lit up timelines like they were born to stand next to each other. And Pearl, who once enjoyed being unseen with Maurice, started feeling painfully unseen without him. The world read their chemistry before she had the chance to understand her own feelings. Every clip of them together made her heart tighten. She didn't want to be jealous, but jealousy came naturally when the man she loved shined brightest next to someone else. She kept reminding herself it was just acting, but the attention they received made her own connection feel smaller. And that's the twisted thing about invisible love: when no one sees it, no one believes it exists, not even the one living inside it. It wasn't that Maurice gave Sonia more, it was that the world gave them both a stage Pearl never stood on. Slowly, she felt herself disappearing from her own story, watching others take center spotlight while she tried to hold on to something nobody else could see. Pearl began noticing how people store memories like weapons. Every smiling photo of Maurice and Sonia became a sharp record her heart could not unsee. She would scroll through her phone late at night, collecting accidental evidence, tiny moments the internet exploded over. Fans edited their clips together, praising their chemistry, matching their laughter, almost as if the world was trying to script a romance she never asked for. It didn't matter that she knew Maurice better in ways not caught on camera. The online version of him with Sonia felt louder, brighter, more permanent. Meanwhile, Pearl's own memories with him lived quietly in her mind, without hashtags, without public applause. The saddest part was how she started doubting her own reality, wondering if love only counts when the world can validate it. She hated that she was tempted to keep receipts, to save old texts, old photos, old messages, not to prove anything to Maurice, but to remind herself she wasn't imagining their connection. But every screenshot felt like another sign she was losing trust. She didn't want to be that person who archived pain while others archived joy. Yet she couldn't help it. She was watching the internet build a folder called Maurice and Sonia, while her own folder named Maurice and Me stayed hidden, lonely, untouched. Slowly, Pearl realized she wasn't saving proof of love, she was saving proof she wasn't crazy. And that realization broke her more than any picture ever could. There is a silent stage in relationships that nobody wants to admit exists, that strange in between where you're still together but the connection feels hollow. Pearl entered that quiet phase without choosing it. Everything between her and Maurice still looked the same from the outside: messages exchanged, calls made, occasional visits, soft check-ins. But the energy had changed. It was subtle at first, like a room losing its warmth. She felt it the moment Maurice began talking more about work, about scenes with Sonia, about how easy it was to film with someone who just gets the rhythm. He didn't say it to hurt her. He didn't even realize it hurt. But Pearl felt the shift in his tone, the absent-minded pauses, the distracted smiles. She noticed he laughed harder around Sonia, even on camera. And that hurt in a way she couldn't explain. It wasn't that he stopped caring, he just stopped shining for her the way he did for someone else. Pearl held on because she didn't want to be the one to break the spell. Ending things felt too final, too cruel. So she stayed in the zombie phase, where love moves like a body that forgot its soul. She kept responding to his messages, kept pretending everything was fine, kept hoping she could feel alive again beside him. But every day felt like loving a shadow of the man she once knew. And she feared that if she let go, she would finally see the truth, that their relationship died long before she admitted it. When things finally cracked open, heartbreak didn't destroy Pearl, it transformed her. There is something almost supernatural about the way pain reshapes a person. She started waking up earlier, dressing better, taking care of herself with a determination she never had before. People call it a glow-up, but it was really survival. She needed to remind herself she existed outside the jealousy and hurt. Every improvement became a declaration: I am more than what broke me. Online, people started noticing her beauty in a new way, praising her aura, her elegance, her confidence. But she knew the truth behind the shine. She wasn't glowing because she was healed. She was glowing because she refused to let pain swallow her whole. Every small victory felt like revenge against the version of herself who once felt invisible next to Sonia. She didn't hate Sonia, not even close. She hated the way the world made her compare herself. She hated how Maurice never understood how heavy that comparison felt. The glow-up wasn't about winning him back or outshining anyone else. It was about reclaiming the pieces of herself she abandoned while trying to hold on to him. And even though she looked stronger on the outside, inside she still carried the soft ache of someone who loved deeply and quietly. Pain didn't make her extraordinary. She was always extraordinary. Heartbreak just peeled away everything that made her forget it. In her loneliest moments, Pearl found herself confiding in strangers online. Not friends, not family, not people who knew the full story, just anonymous profiles with no faces and no expectations. There was comfort in the anonymity. Strangers didn't judge her for feeling jealous. They didn't dismiss her emotions with "it's just acting" or "you're overthinking it." They listened. They cared without knowing her, supported her without needing anything back. It felt like a digital confessional, a place where vulnerability could exist without consequence. She realized how rare it was to speak freely without worrying her words would be used against her later. With strangers, she didn't need to pretend to be strong or unbothered. She could admit she felt small, insecure, and afraid. And somehow, those confessions felt more healing than any advice from those close to her. In a strange way, nameless people became her temporary sanctuary. The internet, often loud and cruel, provided a quiet corner where she could breathe again. She learned that sometimes the safest place to fall apart is in front of people who will never know your face, because they hold your words without connecting them to your identity. And for the first time in weeks, Pearl felt seen, not as the girl who feared losing Maurice, not as someone competing with Sonia, but simply as a human being trying to process pain. The comfort of strangers became its own kind of soft, unexpected grace. Pearl began noticing how every conversation with Maurice turned into a performance. She started choosing her words carefully, afraid that expressing her fears would make her seem insecure. He began speaking like someone who didn't want to say the wrong thing. Both of them were tiptoeing around emotions, acting like they were on a stage with an unseen audience. They weren't arguing, but they weren't connecting either. It felt like living inside a relationship panopticon, an invisible emotional prison where every word was monitored, every reaction judged. Pearl didn't blame Maurice, she blamed the circumstances. The entire world had turned their dynamic into a spectacle without them realizing it. She became overly aware of how she sounded, how she looked, how much emotion she showed. Love stopped being raw and honest, it became strategic. Even her silence felt heavy, like it carried hidden messages. She wished she could go back to the days when she could simply tell Maurice she missed him without wondering if it sounded needy. She wished she could express her jealousy without feeling embarrassed. Instead, she acted calm, composed, unaffected, performing a version of herself she barely recognized. They were no longer two people in love, they were two careful actors afraid to break character. Every hug felt slightly rehearsed, every goodbye slightly delayed, every call slightly strained. The relationship wasn't ruined by Sonia or by the internet, it was ruined by the fear of being vulnerable. And that fear slowly built a wall neither of them dared to climb. When the relationship finally ended, Pearl wanted closure more than anything. She wanted a conversation that explained everything, what went wrong, when the shift happened, how they reached this silent breaking point. But closure isn't something everyone can give. Maurice didn't disappear, he simply drifted away, leaving Pearl holding questions with no answers. She wanted him to sit with her, to talk through the pain, to acknowledge the hurt. But he didn't have the emotional space left to do that. And that was the cruelty of it, she wasn't abandoned, but she wasn't understood either. Social media made everything worse. Even without meaning to, Maurice kept appearing on her screen, photos, interviews, scenes with Sonia, moments that looked joyful, alive, effortless. It felt like watching someone move on through a window she couldn't close. She tried muting, blocking, deleting, but the algorithm always found a way to remind her of what she lost. Pearl realized closure wasn't a right, it was a privilege. Some people get clean endings. Others get digital reminders that never stop. She was part of the second group. So she learned to build her own closure, piece by piece, accepting truths he never spoke aloud. She didn't hate him for living quietly, she just wished he had stayed long enough to say goodbye properly. But life rarely gives people the goodbyes they deserve. After everything, Pearl started loving differently, quietly, privately, almost like someone in witness protection. She no longer wanted the world to see her heart. She no longer wanted public proof of affection or pictures that strangers could analyze. She learned that the moment the internet sees love, it starts to interfere. So she built a new version of romance for herself, one that didn't depend on validation or visibility. She became careful with her feelings, choosing who to trust and who to keep at a safe distance. Pearl didn't hide because she was afraid, she hid because she understood the value of peace. She understood how loud the world becomes when a love story is exposed. She understood how quickly people create narratives that don't belong to you. So when someone new appeared in her life, soft, patient, gentle, she kept it quiet. No photos, no hints, no public acknowledgements. Just two people learning each other slowly, without an audience. She realized that love doesn't need to be loud to be real. It doesn't need applause to be meaningful. It just needs safety. And in the quiet, she found safety again. The most romantic thing she could imagine was someone whispering, "Let's keep this just between us." Not because they were hiding something wrong, but because they were protecting something right. In the silence, Pearl finally understood that disappearing from the world was not losing, it was choosing peace over spectacle, reality over rumors, healing over chaos. Hope you enjoyed the lovely gist by my fans.